She offered her body for a ride, but the cowboy put her on his horse and said, "You're safe now." Dust lay thick on the ground, and the wind moved gently through dry grass at the edges of the road. The sun was slowly going down, turning the sky orange and red. With every passing minute, the light became weaker and the shadows grew longer. The young woman stood alone near the roadside, holding a small, worn bag close to her chest. Inside it were only a few clothes and some old papers. That was all she had left. Her shoes were dusty, and her feet ached from walking for hours. She had been walking since morning, hoping to find a ride, a town, or even a sign of life. But the road gave her nothing. She felt tired, hungry, and afraid. Her phone had stopped working earlier that day. No calls, no messages, no help. She had tried waving at passing vehicles, but very few came this way, and none had stopped. Each time a car passed without slowing down, her hope became smaller. As the evening grew closer, fear settled deep inside her chest. She knew how dangerous it could be to stay alone on a road like this after dark. She had heard stories, too many stories. Her heart beat faster when she thought about them, and she tried to push those thoughts away. Her life had not always been this way. Once she had dreams. Simple dreams, but real ones. She wanted a peaceful life, a small home, and people who cared about her. But life had been hard, and one bad choice had led to another. Trusting the wrong people, believing false promises, and running away from problems instead of facing them had slowly brought her here. She remembered the day she left her last job. The pay was low, but it was honest work. Still, she felt trapped and thought something better was waiting for her somewhere else. Someone had promised help, a fresh start, and easy work in another town. She believed them. That decision changed everything. Now, standing alone on this road, she felt regret more strongly than ever before. If she could turn back time, she would. But time does not listen to regret. The wind became cooler, and she hugged herself for warmth. Her stomach growled quietly, reminding her that she had not eaten since morning. She looked around again, hoping to see headlights in the distance. For a long moment there was nothing but silence. Then, far away, she noticed movement. Not a car, not a truck. At first, she thought her tired eyes were playing tricks on her, but slowly the shape became clearer. Someone was coming down the road on a horse. Her heart jumped. A man on horseback was not something she expected to see. As he came closer, she could see his wide hat, his calm posture, and the slow, steady steps of the horse. He moved as if he belonged to this land, like the road and the sky were familiar friends. She did not know whether to feel relieved or scared. She had learned the hard way not to trust easily, but she also knew she had very few choices left. Darkness was almost here. She stepped a little closer to the road, unsure what to do. Her hands shook slightly as she brushed dust off her clothes, though she knew it made little difference. When the cowboy noticed her, he gently slowed his horse and stopped a short distance away. He looked at her quietly, not with surprise or anger, but with curiosity and concern. He did not rush or speak right away. His calm made her nervous, yet somehow it also made her feel a little less afraid. "Are you all right?" he asked in a steady voice. The simple question almost broke her. No one had asked her that in a long time. She opened her mouth to answer, but for a moment no words came out. Her throat felt tight. I'm stuck," she finally said. "I need to get to the next town." The cowboy nodded slowly. He did not stare at her in a way that made her uncomfortable. His eyes showed understanding, as if he had seen hardship before. "That's a long walk," he said. "Especially this late." She nodded. Her eyes dropped to the ground. She felt embarrassed, weak, and ashamed of how desperate she had become. "I don't have money," she added quickly, as if defending herself before he could ask. "My phone's dead. I've been walking all day." The cowboy stayed quiet for a moment, thinking. The horse shifted gently beneath him, calm and patient. The woman felt panic rise again. What if he refused to help? What if he just rode away like everyone else? The fear of being left alone pushed her to say something she had promised herself she would never say. She lifted her eyes, forcing herself to meet his gaze. Her voice became softer, almost breaking. I can offer something else," she said, barely above a whisper. The words tasted bitter as they left her mouth. She hated herself for saying them. But desperation can make people forget who they are. For a moment, the air between them felt heavy. She waited for his reaction, bracing herself for judgment, for something ugly, or for him to look at her the way others had before. But that look never came. Instead, the cowboy's expression changed, not to interest, not to anger, but to something closer to disappointment and concern. Not disappointment in her, but in the situation that had pushed her this far. He shook his head gently. "No," he said firmly. "You don't owe anyone that." His words surprised her so much that she looked up quickly. He met her eyes again, calm and serious. "You're not an object," he continued. "You're a person who's scared and tired." Tears filled her eyes without warning. She tried to hold them back, but they spilled over anyway. She turned her face away, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't know what else to do." The cowboy moved his horse a little closer, careful not to frighten her. "You did what you thought you had to do," he said. "But you're safe now." Those words echoed in her mind. Safe. She had not felt safe in a long time. Without another word, he got down from his horse and held the reins. He adjusted the saddle and looked at her. "Get on," he said calmly. "I'll take you to town." She hesitated, unsure if this was real or just another moment of false hope, but something in his voice made her trust him. Slowly, she stepped closer, and he helped her onto the horse with care. As she settled into the saddle, her hands still shaking, she felt something she had not felt in years, a small spark of hope. The cowboy climbed back onto the horse behind her, keeping a respectful distance. He gently guided the horse forward, and they began moving down the road together. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, the woman looked ahead, holding back tears. For the first time that day, she believed she might survive the night. And though she did not know it yet, this moment on a quiet road was the beginning of a change that would shape the rest of her life. The horse moved at a steady pace, its hooves making soft sounds against the dirt road. The night air felt cooler now, and the sky above them was turning dark blue, dotted with the first stars. The woman sat quietly in front, holding the saddle with careful hands. Her body was tired, but her mind was still restless. She kept replaying what had just happened. The words she had spoken in desperation still echoed in her head, bringing a wave of shame. She wondered if the cowboy was judging her silently, even though his actions had shown kindness. She did not dare to look back at him. Instead, she stared ahead at the road, letting the night hide her tears. The cowboy guided the horse calmly, as if there was no rush. He did not speak right away, giving her space. He understood that silence can sometimes feel safer than questions. After a while, he spoke softly. "What's your name?" She hesitated for a moment. Names had power, names meant being seen, but she answered anyway. "Lena," she said. "That's a good name," he replied simply. "I'm Caleb." Hearing his name made him feel more real to her, less like a stranger passing through her life for a moment. Still, she kept her guard up. Life had taught her to do that. They continued riding in silence for a bit longer. The road curved gently and fields stretched out on both sides, quiet and empty. The only sounds were the horse and the night wind. Caleb spoke again. "How long have you been on the road?" "Since morning," she answered. "I thought I could make it to the next town before dark." "That's a hard walk," he said. "Especially alone," she nodded. "I didn't plan it well." There was a pause, then she added, "I don't plan most things well." Her words came out bitter but honest. Caleb did not correct her or offer advice. "Sometimes plans fall apart," he said. "Doesn't mean you're broken." That sentence stayed with her. She had felt broken for a long time. As they rode, her thoughts drifted back to the past she had tried to escape. She remembered the small apartment she once lived in, the job she left behind, and the people who had promised her an easier life somewhere else. They had sounded so sure, so kind. She wanted to believe them because believing felt better than staying stuck. But promises can be empty, and trust can be dangerous. When things went wrong, those people disappeared, leaving her alone in a place she barely knew. She tried to manage on her own, moving from one temporary place to another, always hoping the next step would be better. Eventually, hope became thinner. Fear replaced it. Now, riding through the night with a stranger who had shown her respect, she felt confused. Why would someone help her without asking for anything in return? She was not used to that. "You don't have to take me far," she said suddenly. "I don't want to be trouble." Caleb shook his head gently. "You're not trouble, and I'll take you somewhere safe." Safe, that word again. She took a slow breath. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. He thought for a moment before answering. "Because someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it, and because it's the right thing to do." She did not ask him to explain further. She sensed that his past held its own pain, and she respected that boundary. As the road continued, Lena's body slowly relaxed. The fear that had been tight in her chest all day began to loosen. Her hunger was still there, but it felt less sharp now that she was not alone. The horse slowed near a small stream crossing the road. Caleb stopped to let the horse drink. He got down and held the reins, giving Lena a chance to rest. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, thank you." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small piece of bread wrapped in cloth. "It's not much," he said, handing it to her. "But it should help." Her eyes widened slightly. "You don't have to, I know," he said gently. "But I want to." She accepted it with both hands. The simple act almost made her cry again. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. When they continued riding, she felt stronger. Not just physically, but inside. She found herself speaking more freely. "I used to think asking for help meant failure," she said. "Now I think not asking almost ruined me." Caleb smiled faintly. "Pride can be heavy to carry." "So can fear," she replied. They shared a quiet laugh, small but real. It felt strange, even wrong, to laugh after such a hard day. But it also felt human. The road lights of a distant building appeared ahead, glowing softly in the darkness. Lena noticed them and felt a mix of relief and worry. Reaching a place meant facing whatever came next. "What happens when we get there?" she asked. "There's a small town not far ahead," Caleb said. "They have a place where travelers can rest, warm bed, food, no questions asked." She swallowed. "And then, he said calmly, you decide your next step." That scared her more than being lost on the road. Deciding meant responsibility, but it also meant possibility. As they rode closer to the lights, Lena felt something shift inside her. She realized that for the first time in a long while, she was not being pushed or pulled by fear alone. Someone had treated her with dignity, and that reminded her that she still had worth. She looked up at the stars, bright and steady above them. The night no longer felt so threatening. It felt quiet, almost peaceful. Whatever waited for her in that town, she knew one thing for certain. This ride was not just taking her off the road. It was carrying her away from the person she thought she had become, and closer to the person she still hoped to be. The lights of the small town grew clearer as the horse moved closer. What once looked like distant stars on the ground now became real buildings, quiet streets, and warm yellow lamps glowing softly in the night. Lena felt a strange mix of relief and nervousness. The road behind her felt long and painful, but the road ahead was still unknown. Caleb slowed the horse as they entered the edge of town. Everything was calm. Most people were already inside their homes. A dog barked somewhere far away, then went quiet again. The town felt simple, almost forgotten by time. "This place looks peaceful," Lena said softly. "It usually is," Caleb replied. "People here mind their own business, but they help when it matters." He guided the horse toward a small building near the center of town. It was not fancy, but it looked clean and welcoming. A single light burned near the door. Caleb stopped the horse and carefully helped Lena down. Her legs felt weak when her feet touched the ground. She had been sitting for a long time and her body was still tired from the long day. Caleb noticed and waited until she found her balance. "Take your time," he said. She nodded and took a slow breath. Standing on solid ground again felt strange. She looked around, taking in the quiet safety of the place. For the first time since morning, she did not feel like she needed to run. Caleb tied the horse nearby and walked with her toward the building. He knocked gently on the door. After a moment, an older woman opened it. Her face was kind and her eyes were sharp but warm. "Evening, Caleb," the woman said. "You're out late." "Evening, Miss Ruth," he replied. "I've got someone who needs a safe place tonight." Miss Ruth looked at Lena carefully, not with judgment but with understanding. She had seen many travelers pass through this town, and she knew the signs of someone who had been through too much. "Come in, dear," she said, opening the door wider. "You look exhausted." Lena hesitated for just a second, then stepped inside. The warmth of the room wrapped around her immediately. The smell of simple food filled the air, and the soft light made her feel calmer. "Thank you," Lena said quietly. Miss Ruth smiled. "You're welcome. Sit down. I'll get you something warm." Lena sat at a small table near the wall. Her hands rested in her lap, and she realized they were no longer shaking. That small detail surprised her. Caleb stood near the door, watching to make sure she was comfortable. When Miss Ruth returned with a bowl of soup and a cup of water, Lena felt her throat tighten again. She had not realized how badly she needed this until it was right in front of her. "Eat slowly," Miss Ruth said. "You're safe here." That word followed her everywhere tonight. Safe. As Lena ate, Caleb spoke quietly with Miss Ruth near the counter. Lena could hear parts of their conversation, but she did not try to listen closely. For once, she did not feel the need to worry about what people were saying about her. After a while, Caleb came back to the table. I'll be heading out soon, he said. But before I go, is there anything you need? She looked up at him, surprised. You've already done so much. I know, he said gently. I just want to make sure you're all right. She thought for a moment. I think I just need rest. He nodded. That's a good place to start. There was a pause, then Lena spoke again, her voice low. You never told me about the person who helped you. Caleb leaned against the wall, thinking. It was a long time ago. I was younger, angry, making poor choices. I didn't think I mattered much back then. She watched him closely. This was the first time she had seen a crack in his calm. One night, he continued, I ended up somewhere I shouldn't have been. I expected things to go bad, but someone showed me kindness instead. No questions, no demands, just help. And that changed you? Lena asked. It reminded me that I had a choice, he said. Sometimes one moment is enough. His words settled deep in her chest. She wondered if this night might be that kind of moment for her. Miss Ruth returned and told Lena there was a small room ready for her upstairs, a clean bed. Fresh blankets, simple comfort. Lena stood slowly. Thank you, she said again, her voice filled with emotion. Miss Ruth patted her arm. Get some rest. Tomorrow can wait. Caleb walked Lena to the stairs. I'll be back in town in the morning, he said. If you need help figuring out your next step, I can listen. She nodded. I'd like that. They stood there for a moment, unsure how to say goodbye. Finally, Lena spoke. You didn't just give me a ride, she said. You gave me something I forgot I could feel. What's that? He asked. Hope, she said. He smiled softly. Hold on to it. As Lena climbed the stairs, she felt the weight of the day finally begin to lift. The room was small but clean. She sat on the edge of the bed, then lay back slowly, staring at the ceiling. Her body was exhausted, but her mind was awake. Thoughts came and went, but they were different now. They were not filled only with fear or regret. They were filled with questions about the future. She thought about the road she had been walking earlier that day. How empty and endless it had felt. She realized that if Caleb had not come along when he did, she did not know where she would be now. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time they were not only from pain. They were from relief. Downstairs, she heard quiet voices and the soft sound of a door closing. She knew Caleb had left. Part of her felt sad, but another part felt strong enough to stand on its own again. She closed her eyes and let herself rest. That night, Lena slept deeply. For the first time in a long while, she did not wake up afraid. The road had not ended her story. It had led her to a pause, a breath, and a chance to begin again. Morning light slipped gently through the small window, touching Lena's face and waking her slowly. For a few seconds, she did not move. She listened to the quiet sounds of the building, soft footsteps downstairs, a distant door opening, the calm hum of a new day beginning. It took her a moment to remember where she was. Then it came back to her. The road, the horse. Caleb's steady voice, the warmth of the room. She sat up slowly, surprised by how rested she felt. Her body was still sore, but the heavy weight she usually carried inside her chest felt lighter. She swung her feet onto the floor and stood, steadying herself with a deep breath. The room was simple. A small bed, a chair, a table, and a window that looked out over the quiet town. Nothing special. Yet it felt like the safest place she had been in a long time. After washing her face, she went downstairs. Miss Ruth was already awake, moving calmly around the kitchen. Good morning, Miss Ruth said, smiling. You slept well? Yes, Lena replied honestly. Better than I have in a long time. That's good to hear, Miss Ruth said. There's breakfast on the table. Lena sat down and looked at the food in front of her. It was simple, but it felt like a gift. As she ate, she noticed how different she felt compared to the night before. The fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her every thought. Caleb said he might come by this morning, Miss Ruth said casually. He usually does when he brings someone here. Lena felt a small warmth in her chest at the sound of his name. She nodded. He said he'd help me think about what comes next. Miss Ruth studied her for a moment. Whatever you decide, remember this, she said gently. One hard chapter does not decide the whole story. Those words stayed with Lena as she finished eating. A short time later, the door opened, and Caleb stepped inside. He looked the same as he had the night before, calm, steady, and quietly strong. When he saw Lena, he smiled. Morning, he said. Morning, she replied, returning the smile. They stepped outside to talk. The town looked different in daylight, less mysterious, more real. People were beginning their day, moving slowly, greeting each other with nods and small smiles. They sat on a bench near the building. For a moment, neither of them spoke. So, Caleb said at last, how are you feeling? Lena thought about the question. Tired, she said, but clear, like I can finally think. That's a good place to be, he replied. She looked down at her hands. I don't really know what I'm doing next. That's okay, Caleb said. You don't have to know everything today. She took a breath. I keep thinking about how close I was to giving up last night. He nodded slowly. Sometimes people don't realize how strong they are until they survive something hard. She looked at him. You really believe that? I've seen it, he said. They sat quietly again. Lena felt a need to speak, to finally let some of the weight out. I used to think my life was already decided, she said. Like all the bad choices I made had closed every door. Caleb listened without interrupting. But last night, she continued, when you treated me like I mattered, it felt like someone opened a window just a little. He smiled softly. Sometimes that's enough to change the air. She let out a small laugh. You talk like someone who's learned things the hard way. That's because I have, he said. She hesitated, then asked, what did you do after someone helped you? Caleb looked out toward the road for a moment. I stayed, I worked, I learned patience. It wasn't easy, but I chose to live differently. Lena nodded. I want that. I don't want to keep running. That's an important decision, he said. Miss Ruth stepped outside then and joined them. There's a small job opening at the local store, she said. Nothing fancy, but it's honest work if you're interested. Lena's heart beat faster. The idea of staying in one place felt both comforting and frightening. I think I'd like to try, she said. Miss Ruth smiled. Good, we'll take it one step at a time. The rest of the day passed slowly but steadily. Lena walked through town with Miss Ruth, learning where things were. She spoke to the store owner, who welcomed her without many questions. That alone felt like a miracle. In the afternoon, Lena and Caleb walked along the edge of town. The fields stretched wide and the sky felt open. I don't know how to thank you, Lena said. You already did, Caleb replied. You chose yourself. She stopped walking and looked at him. Will I see you again? I pass through here often, he said. But even if you don't, remember this, what you felt last night came from inside you too. She nodded, understanding what he meant. When it was time for Caleb to leave, they stood quietly for a moment. You're going to be okay, he said. So are you, she replied. She watched him walk away, feeling something new settle inside her. Strength. That evening, Lena returned to the small room. She sat by the window and looked at the road in the distance. It no longer felt like a threat. It felt like a reminder of where she had been and how far she had already come. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future that did not scare her. And that made all the difference. Days passed quietly, then weeks. Life in the small town moved at a slower pace than anything Lena had known before. At first, the calm felt strange, almost uncomfortable. She was used to noise inside her head, worry, fear, rushing thoughts. Here, mornings came gently and nights ended peacefully. Lena started working at the local store. The job was simple. She cleaned shelves, arranged goods, greeted customers, and learned how the store worked. The owner was kind but firm, expecting honesty and effort. Lena gave both. Each day she showed up on time. Each task she completed made her feel a little stronger. At night, she returned to the small room Miss Ruth had given her. It still wasn't much, but it felt like her own space. She kept it clean, made her bed carefully, and placed her few belongings neatly on the table. Order gave her comfort. It reminded her that she was no longer drifting. Sometimes, when the store was quiet, Lena caught herself thinking about the road she once stood on. The dust. The fear, the way her heart had raced with every passing moment. Those memories did not disappear, but they no longer controlled her. They became reminders of how far she had come. Miss Ruth checked on her often, not in a way that felt heavy, but in a way that felt caring. They shared simple conversations over meals. Miss Ruth never asked for details Lena wasn't ready to give. That patience helped Lena open up slowly in her own time. One evening, after closing the store, Lena walked alone to the edge of town. The sky was painted with soft colors as the sun went down. She stood there quietly, breathing in the cool air. For the first time, she felt steady standing on her own. She realized something important then. The kindness she had received did not mean she was weak. It meant she had survived long enough to accept help. Caleb passed through town again a few weeks later. Lena saw him from across the street and felt a warm surprise rise in her chest. He looked the same, calm and steady, as if time moved differently around him. They greeted each other like old friends, even though their connection was brief. They sat on the same bench where they had spoken before. You look different, he said. So do you, she replied with a smile. but in a good way. They talked about small things, work, the weather, the town, but beneath those words was a shared understanding. That night on the road had changed them both in quiet ways. I stayed, Lena said finally. I'm working, I'm trying. Caleb nodded. I'm glad. I still have hard days, she added, but now I don't run from them. That's strength, he said simply. When Caleb left again, Lena didn't feel the same fear of being alone. She waved goodbye and returned to her life with confidence she had never known before. Months passed. Lena saved small amounts of money. She learned routines. She made mistakes, then corrected them. She learned to forgive herself when things didn't go perfectly. That was the hardest lesson of all. One afternoon, a traveler came into the store. The woman looked tired, lost, and unsure. Lena recognized that look immediately. It was a mirror of who she once was. Lena greeted her gently, offered water, and spoke kindly. She didn't fix the woman's problems. She didn't make promises. She simply treated her with dignity. That night, Lena lay in bed thinking about how life had shifted. Not because everything became easy, but because she had changed. She no longer saw herself as someone broken beyond repair. She saw herself as someone learning. The road was still out there, stretching far beyond the town, but now it no longer frightened her. It reminded her of the moment when kindness met desperation and everything began to turn. Lena closed her eyes with a quiet smile. She was safe. She was steady. And she was finally moving forward, not away from her life, but toward it.